Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 2 is all done and dusted, and after I watched the episode, I went online to have a look to see how old is Arya, and I discovered that's what it looks like. A lot of people did. A lot of people had a look to see how old was Arya after watching the episode. Before I get to that, at the start of the episode, they had a scene with the wall broken open in a little opening, the credit scene, and I thought that was a pretty cool addition. And then I went back and looked at the very start of Season 8, Episode 1. It was in there as well, so it wasn't a new addition to this one. I completely missed it when I watched Episode 1. They have the wall actually broken at the very, very, very start of the credit scenes, or the opening scene. So we get, at one point, Arya down at the forge. She's going to go see how her weapon's getting on with Gendry, and I thought she was giving him a little bit of a look. I wasn't really sure, but I thought, is she sort of eyeing him up a little bit there? And they talk, and she sort of shows off her skills, and he says, okay, I'll make you the weapon. And then she goes back to see him later on, and she was eyeing him up. And she does say, we're all going to be dead soon, and what have we got to lose? Or words to that effect. And I just thought, is she like 10 years old or 12? Is this a 12-year-old girl? I know George R.R. Martin loves a bit of incest and a bit of pedophilia, but that's what I was thinking. Is that a bit too much? Are we seeing a 12-year-old girl jumping on top of this guy? Now, this isn't the first time the TV show has actually had some people that might be questionably young. Sansa was fairly young when she got first married in TV terms, and I'm not 100% sure how old Dany was supposed to be when she was first married off to Khal Drogo in the TV series, but probably quite young as well. I know in the books I think she's supposed to be 12 when that happens, and according to the books I think Arya starts off being 9, and she's probably something like 12 in his latest book, I think, but I'm not 100% sure on the way that the time gaps go with George R. R. Martin's actual books. But in the TV series, they're claiming she's 18, so nothing to see here, people. But that's the first thing I thought. And the actress doesn't look like she's her own age, by the way. The actress is like 21 years old. She doesn't look that old either. But 18-year-old Arya, yeah, nothing really to see here, nothing to talk about, but lots of people are talking about it. There's a lot of people, like myself, thought, how old is she? Is this what we're really getting on HBO now? We're getting some pedophilia. So all in all, the episode is fairly similar to episode 1 of season 8. There's a bit more of a reunion, or maybe we can't call it reunions anymore, but just sort of discussions between some of the characters and a little bit of a catch-up. There still isn't enough time for everybody to have a proper catch-up, but nothing happens at all still in this episode. So a lot of build-up still waiting for things to happen. But a very similar episode to episode 1. It was generally good, but again, it's with the promise that something's going to happen. So something has to happen soon. Nothing's happened yet in 2 episodes, but a lot of slow build-up, a lot of discussions. Things are all getting into place. And we start the episode off with Sir Jaime in front of what you might call a court. It's not exactly a court, but it's got Dany at the front of it, and we've got Jon and we've got Sansa there. And they're sort of talking about what they should do with Jaime, because quite rightly they all know that Jaime's done some horrible crimes against all their families. He killed Dany's father, he sort of attacked the Stark's father, attacked Ned Stark, and so on. And he sort of said, well, we're at war and I did things at war and I'm not going to apologise. But it is good to see that they address these issues, because basically everybody's killed someone in everybody's family by now. That's kind of where we're at. And so for a sort of grand coalition of everybody to get together, it's good to see, at least in a minor way, they kind of address some of the grievances that, oh yeah, you're the guy that killed this person, or I'm the one that killed so-and-so. So, it's put out there, it is aired. Obviously not enough time is spent on it, but they have spent kind of 2 episodes so far in these sort of things, or similar things to this, so how much more time can they spend? But I'm sure a lot of fans wouldn't be unhappy if they spent even more time with the characters interacting with each other like this. But at the tribunal, things are looking bad for Jaime. It looks like he might be getting killed. And then we have Brienne comes up and speaks up for him and sort of defends him. And Sansa says, well, I trust Brienne, so that's it. I'll trust him now. And Jon Snow says we could use every able-bodied person, so that's it. Dany doesn't really get the way that she thought it was going to go. And Jaime's sort of all is forgiven, and he's allowed to join the big army against the dead. And when the tribunal finishes, Dany looks like she's going to have a little chat to Jon, but Jon won't even look her in the eyes. He kind of looks down, he just walks away, and she looks a little bit bemused by, I don't know what's going on here. Jon's obviously kind of thinking over the news he had last episode about how he's actually the last male heir of the Targaryens, and he is Dany's older brother's son, so that would make him Dany's nephew. So he may be thinking a little bit about the whole incestuous thing he's gotten himself involved in as well. But just the whole, I'm kind of the rightful heir, not you, and how do I bring it up and talk to you? After that, we get to the scene that I already mentioned where Arya goes down to the forge to have a little check out of Gendry and see how he's going with making her weapon, and he pretty much says he's got proper weapons to make and not going to get to hers until then, and she sort of uses a bit of weapons and shows him that she's quite deadly, and he decides that he'll get about making her weapon next. And then we get what I thought the start of the episode would have been, the confrontation between Jaime and Bran, because that was the last scene of the previous episode. I thought that's where this one would kick off, but it didn't. But Bran is essentially not Bran anymore, so doesn't really care. So there's not really much going on here at all. Jaime apologises, but again, he's not really dealing with the same person that he in fact tried to murder by throwing out of the window. And then we're back to a little bit more of reunion stuff. We get Tywin and Jaime having a little talk. They haven't chatted for quite a while, or at very least since last season, where they were all down in King's Landing together. And reunion again. We got Jaime talking with Brienne, sort of thanks her for sticking up for him, and he says he'd want to fight under her. It looks like she's got command of one of the sides of the army. I guess they'll have 3 main commanders, and she's got one of the flanks, and he said he'd like to fight alongside her. And then we get a little bit of a confrontation between Sansa and Dany. In the previous episode, it did look like they both pretty much hate each other, and so Dany decides to try to smooth things over and make up with Sansa, and it looks like things are going well, and they're going to just make up, and there's going to be nothing there. And then Sansa brings back up what happens after the war, what happens to the North. We decided that, we wouldn't be ruled by anyone anymore. What are you going to do about the North? And at that point in time, Dany doesn't look too happy, and it's sort of nothing else is said. So that friction still exists. Yeah, they're going to fight together right now, but once we've killed all the Deadites, or whatever we're calling the dead people, we're maybe going to have to fight each other as well. And then we go back to a little bit of reunions again. We get Theon, he's up in Winterfell by now, and Sansa gives him a good hug, and the two of them exchange words, and he says, hey, I'd like to fight for Winterfell. So that's him trying to make up for how he kind of conquered Winterfell a few seasons ago, trying to make back up for the crimes he committed. And then we go into a little bit more of a reunion scene, and we also get Tormund the Giant's Bane having a look to see if Brienne is still there. He's always good for comedic relief, I find. I'm not sure if he's supposed to be comedic relief, but I think he's comedy gold in a lot of the stuff that he does in Game of Thrones. So he's still looking for her. He kind of promised her, or I don't know if promise is the right word, but he said something about how the two of them would have big children, I think is the words he used last season. So he's still keen to go and find Brienne. And this is where it's kind of mentioned that the dead are fairly close by this stage. The Umbers were all killed by them, as discovered at the very end of last episode. And the dead can't be more than a day away, or I think I said less than a day away. So this is sort of news to everyone there in the castle, and so they know that the attack is imminent. In fact, it probably has to be next episode. And so we get to a little bit of military planning, and the general plan is that the Night King himself, perhaps if he's killed, all of the dead will just kind of go away. So I don't know if they know that for a fact, but that is the basic plan. So they're saying they cannot defeat all the dead outnumber them too much, it's a lost fight, but if they can lure in the dead king, or the Night King, then if they kill him, then maybe they'll be able to win. And Bran says that the Night King wants to kill him off, so they're going to use Bran as a bait. So Bran's going to go in the Godswood, in the tree area inside Winterfell, and Theon is going to guard him with the Ironborn. They're also going to keep the dragons back, I think, or they're going to keep the dragons nearby, so I think maybe they'll keep the dragons hidden away and they won't be in the fight to begin with, but the undead dragon will obviously rock up at some point anyway. But the dragons will be kept back, and presumably a lot of the army will be kept back so they can go and kill the Night King if he shows his face, but I have a feeling he'll be riding the dead dragon. And then we get a little bit of quiet before the storm period. They know that the dead army will be there very soon, and these people here just get a bit of a heat around the fire, and they have a bit of chat and a bit of wine, and bit of a catch-up, and the Giantsbane tells everyone the story about how he got the nickname Giantsbane. And then we get a little scene between Arya and the Hound. They did have a little short reunion scene in the last episode where the Hound said, "Didn't you leave me for dead?" And Arya said, "But I robbed you first." I thought that was quite funny. And they talk slightly more here, but it's not really much going on. And she does say that she's got better things to do than to be here before she dies. So she goes away to find someone else. Which is where we get down to the aforementioned Gendry and Arya scene. Before she starts to kind of force her way on him, she does get the weapon off him. So he does create the weapon. The weapon is not what I thought it might have been from the picture from the last episode. I thought it was going to be a lot larger, and it looked to me like, especially since she was kind of smiling when she saw the dragons, that she might steal a dragon, and it was going to be a really long spear or a big lance that she could use as a weapon from Dragonback, but that's actually not what it is. It just looks like it's a double-headed spear, so it's got a blade on both ends, and she'll be presumably wielding it like a staff, or I guess something like what Darth Maul's doing in Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. So I guess she'll be doing all kinds of twirls and spins and slashing lots of people with this sort of double-edged weapon. So that's actually what it was. Nothing at all to be anything remotely close to what I thought, some sort of weapon to use from Dragonback. And once they start getting it on, it kind of cuts away. And then we go back to the scene where these people are sort of, not so much reminiscing, but sort of talking together and so on. And it's brought up that Brienne is not a knight. She's just a lady, and women can't be made knights. And so Jaime says, well, that's not exactly true. A knight can make another knight. And so he goes and knights Brienne, and she's sort of got tears welling up a bit, and everyone has a little cheer. So she's finally been made a knight, or maybe she's the first female knight ever. So it looks like that's a bit of a big moment for Brienne. And then we cut back to the aftermath of the Arya encounter, and unhappy is the only way I think you can describe her face. She doesn't look happy. It looks like there's been a bit of a Me Too moment right here. Regret is the new rape. It looks like she is filled with regret, and I think Gendry might be in trouble. So this does not look like she's too happy about what's happened. She does look like she is a 9-year-old girl that's been violated, and it doesn't matter if she kind of started things. She's a little bit too young to make that decision, and her face looks like she's a bit too young to make that decision. So she doesn't look happy. She's not impressed, and I don't know where they're going with this to go forward, but it's just a very, very strange look on her face. And towards the end of the episode, Dany confronts Jon inside the crypt, and Jon's in front of a statue, and she says, "Oh, who's this statue?" And he explains how it's Ned Stark's sister, and she knows, oh, that's the person that my brother abducted and raped, and then he sort of gives the different story he's learnt of Bran and from Samwise, and, you know, he didn't abduct her. They got married in secret, although somehow he divorced his previous wife. I don't know how that worked exactly back then in the oldie times, but he's gotten married, and so he had a son, and then the son was given away to her brother, who was Ned Stark, and Ned Stark pretended that it was his bastard and raised in secret, and then her face is kind of, you know, realizing what's going on with the story as the story unfolds, until she's like, no, that can't be true, and that means that you're actually the rightful heir, and she doesn't look happy about him being the rightful heir. It doesn't look like she's disturbed that she's actually been banging her nephew, though, so that doesn't look like in any way she's remotely worried about that. But the Targaryens are known for a little bit of brother-sister love, so nothing new there, but she doesn't seem to be remotely concerned with that. But she does seem very concerned that the Iron Throne maybe isn't hers by right. But before they can flesh out any kind of argument, the sort of warning horns go off and people rush around, and we see the last scene of the episode, and we've got the Army of the Dead looking on Winterfell. They're right there, so we have to assume that next episode is going to be the fight with the dead people. Wonder what exactly will happen with that, if it'll be stretched out over a couple of episodes, or if they will in fact just defeat them in one episode. But at some point in time, Cersei will be arriving with these hired mercenaries on the boats that the other Greyjoy has. So that'll be happening as well. So will that just happen sooner rather than later? Is the battle with the dead just going to be a big dud and the Night King is killed and that's it, we're done? Or are they going to stretch this out for a little while, then Cersei will rock up and actually be there while the dead are there? We'll see what happens. We've only got a few more episodes left until it's all finished, but it looks like episode 3, that's when we get to fight the dead. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.